Okay. Thank you for joining me on another Streaming Synergy episode. And in this episode, we're going to talk about some Diablo 3 and Diablo 4 stuff. And today I have Soul Override with me. How are you doing, man?
Doing good. And you?
Pretty good. So Diablo 3, do you have a huge history with it like I do?
Not as much as you have, no. But I do have a history with it.
Yeah, no, fair enough, man. Yeah, with the Diablo franchise, I grew up playing Diablo 1 hard, like, a lot. And then Diablo 2 I got into, especially with, like, the multiplayer. That's where I really shined there. Started doing the whole trading with people, like, relentlessly every day after school and stuff like that. It was pretty bad.
I didn't really play too much Diablo 1, but Diablo 2 I put a lot of time into, and actually got banned one time for using map hacks when I was trying to speed run Mephisto for magic runs.
Really?
And I had to buy a new account. That was a true fact.
Wow. That's awesome. I never got banned, but I used map hacks and everything like that. I feel like that was like a standard, at least towards the end of it.
Now it's all bots. I don't know if you looked at it, but a lot of people are using bots and stuff now to farm.
Yeah, I've heard about it, but I haven't seen it.
Just don't care about it, I guess.
Jeez, I've actually heard of some people doing that in Diablo 3 as well. They have it set up for botting. I don't know how easy it is to detect or how long they get away with it for, but I've heard about it.
I just don't see the fun in that.
I know. I mean, I guess there's a little bit of excitement. Like if you went to work and you left your thing up botting, you know, and you get out of work and you're like, ooh, look at all these goodies I have. But
I guess that's one way to put it. Yeah.
Yeah, but I'd also be sweating too. Like at any moment I'm getting banned, you know, any moment.
Yeah. It looks like only out of the 19 seasons, there was only 6 that I actually played like real hard.
Yeah, I think mine's actually about the same, and that's because I don't know if you had like the same scenario, but when I first like pre-ordered Diablo 3, I got all excited for it. I played it for like a couple months, if that, and I was like, yeah, I'm out of here. Like this game, the auction house, the no end game was miserable.
Yeah, I had the same experience. I got all excited for it too, and I really liked the story. The storyline was good, but then it was like there was the end game is just what got. It's nothing to keep you around.
Yep, no, I totally agree. And the story, I definitely liked. The only thing I didn't like was Tyrael becoming human, for one, only because like him being this big mysterious angel, you know, that's all powerful and everything. As soon as they humanized that, I was like, come on, man. He was awesome, and now he's like this wuss I'm helping out. But I liked that they brought in like the other angels and everything like that into the story. Like as much of a dick as Imperius is, I still think he's a real cool character design and everything.
Yeah, and it was cool that you went to heaven instead of hell this time too. That was a little different than the other game.
Yeah.
Set it apart.
And then one thing where you didn't play much Diablo 1, you might not know like this stuff like I did, but in the book that you would get with Diablo 1, there was like all kinds of pages of lore in there, and like they would break down all kinds of stuff. Like they talked about the war down in hell between the prime evils and the lesser evils, and that's actually where like Azmodan, Belial, and who's the other dude? Is it just it's just Azmodan and Belial that were missing from like Diablo 2. They were actually mentioned in there. And so with Diablo 3, I was actually really hoping they'd finally bring Belial and Azmodan in, and they did. They just weren't. I don't know. I feel like the story was really good, but where the game was in a bad place, it ruined the focus of how good the story was, if that makes sense.
No, it totally does. Totally get it.
Yeah, but those old stories, they were good, gritty, dark stuff. I've considered doing like lore videos on that because of how it all played out. Like, I don't know if you know, but Azmodan and Belial like gathered a crew down in hell, like a whole army, and they fought against Diablo, Mephisto, Baal, and won, and threw them out of hell. And that's actually why Diablo, Mephisto, and Baal were like on Sanctuary, is because they were like ejected from hell.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, it was really cool stories.
The only version of Diablo 1 I've played is actually on the PlayStation, and I still think I may own it. I'll have to find it one day to bring it.
Oh, that'd be sick, man. Yeah, I played it for a little bit on PlayStation because my friend had it, but I also had it for PC, so I ended up just like going right back to PC.
Back to the memory card thing from the other previous podcast.
Yeah.
It took a lot of space to save a character. I think it was like almost 5 spaces or something. It was insane.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. How they had like the little block system, almost like a Diablo inventory.
Yep.
Jeez. Oh man. So yeah, with Diablo 3, I bailed when it first came out, like the auction house and everything. Funny though, I hated the auction house when it first came out because it just ruined getting your own stuff. Like no matter what you found, it would never be better than what people were posting on the auction house. So it just like, it ruined that. But I think the game is actually in a good place now to where an auction house would be reasonable. Like as weird as it sounds, it's just how it is now that they have sets and everything like that. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, I agree with that. It'd be really good. It's better than what they tried to do with Diablo 3, if you remember what they did at first with the actual money.
Yeah, everything costs like gold and shit, and you could like spend real money to get gold. I spent a lot of money.
It wasn't even the real money. I remember my buddy got some item in the game in this one, and he made $40 off it. Someone paid him $40 to like actually buy the item out of this game when it first came out. They had a real thing where when items dropped, I just remember that because he still remembers that, and he said he was happy because he got his money back.
That's awesome.
Best of his stuff is. That's what he said, and it's still one of the greatest comments ever.
Yeah, no, that fits so perfectly. So yeah, now my opinion has changed a lot since like the release of Diablo 3. I genuinely think Diablo 3 is in a good place. I won't say a great place, but it's in a really good place. And like, I don't regret buying it now that it's evolved and become a lot better, the end game, the greater rifting and all of that. I think it's put it in a pretty good place, though I will say I still feel like it's lacking. Do you have any thoughts on that? Like what you think maybe it's lacking that can make it a lot better?
Yeah, I really think the end game just kills it. I still feel like they've got something, but I feel like it's been the same since the beginning. Like they've added the rifts and things, but they haven't really done enough to change it from what it was at first, and they really need to rework the gear in my opinion.
I agree. Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Like with Path of Exile, when they have a new league, they incorporate a whole new mechanic. And like some of those mechanics you can focus on almost as an end game by itself if you really wanted to, like the delving. Like you can go crazy with the delving. You can build for it and push for it. Same with like Alva, like you can push for those things. The Syndicate, super in-depth. And I feel like Diablo hasn't done anything even close to that.
Another thing that bothers me about it is just when you go and look at the builds, if you look at the top builds, it's all the same gear. Like there's no variation from pushing those. It's like it's almost like Blizzard was like, here's the items you need to use if you want to get to them.
Yep, I totally agree. And one thing I've noticed, comparing Path of Exile and Diablo 3 again, with Path of Exile, there is no list, of like, these are the best builds that get the furthest, period. There's, hey, look at these 20 really great builds, and there's like hundreds of different items you can swap out in their place. Like, you don't have to go with a build to a T, whereas with Diablo, if you look at the top builds, you basically have to copy them to the T. Like, absolutely.
That, and then also I like the fact that a character isn't good at everything. Like you have to create other characters to push different content. You can't stick with the same character and expect to do it all.
Right. Yeah. Like the Cyclone build, good for a lot of content, maybe bossing and like delving, but then with the Cassia, stuff like that, not so good at all.
Yeah. And Diablo, I feel like the only reason I made new characters was just because I was getting to that point where I was kind of bored with the other one. I was like, I need to do something else.
Basically, it was that. Like, I would get bored with something and just want to make a new one. Or it would be like a patch came out for the next season, and now that build is junk, so I'm going to make one of the other ones because they're better now. There was never a time where I was like, I want to make this character because I think it's really cool. Because once you realize cool does not mean effective, you kind of start to shy away from cool.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, but with all the bad that I could, go on and say about Diablo 3, especially if I'm comparing it to like Path of Exile, there is a good to it that I think beats out Path of Exile. Not as a game in general, but a feature that I think Path of Exile could definitely learn from and Diablo did really well with, and that's multiplayer activities. Like reasons to have a group makes the biggest difference. With Path of Exile, there's no real big benefit to having a group of 3 people.
Right. Only early on in the season, if you're trying to all push to get gear to build your actual build, then the only real working together, I guess, would be making aura bots and having them fall around one.
Yeah. So, and that's one thing I really like about Diablo 3, because there have been multiple seasons where I'll have like a solo build where, like, if my friends are offline, I'll just start doing solo greater rifts and trying to push as far as I can with that. And
Yeah.
all right. Yeah.
I agree, though. And that was a good point, too, about the not having multiplayer kind of for the Path of Exile. That was a good point.
Yeah. And then the support thing. In Diablo 3, it's cool. Back with like the multiplayer thing, there are character builds that are specifically just to support other characters. So they're not running around killing things themselves, but instead they're keeping everybody alive, pulling mobs of enemies together. I think that's a cool thing that I wish Path of Exile had a little bit more of, to help that out. But definitely a thing Diablo 3 should not lose focus on. And what did you think about the expansion with the Necromancer being added and everything like that?
It's funny, as I bought it and I still have not played a Necromancer, so I don't really know. And actually, this season was the first season I come back since then, and there was a lot of content and new maps, and I thought they looked really cool, and some of the new things they had added. So I didn't really get to play it too much, but I do enjoy the state it's in now. It's a lot better. I think if they just did variations to the end of the game, this would be good, especially with Diablo 4 coming out. Just they're in the right place. They just got to get it ironed out.
Yep. Yeah, the seasons, I like seasons existing, but I feel like they really could have capitalized on making big changes for every season. Just having, like one new cosmetic setup for the portraits and like a pet or back, or the Conqueror armor set, it being the same armor set season after season. You're just getting like, oh, it's the helmet and the shoulders this season, and then it's the chest piece and the legs this season, and then rinse and repeat over and over. I think all that got really old.
Another thing I like about Diablo 2 that I just thought about compared to Path of Exile that goes along the same lines is that when you make another character, you can just go right into the game and you don't have to go through the whole story. It kind of kills me when you got to run the story over.
Yeah. Yeah, actually, I didn't even think about that. But yeah, that's probably one of the best features that it's easy to forget about. Just being able to
And it's just messing with it right now. I'm remembering a few of these things. I'm like, oh, it's just a lot easier to do that stuff.
Yeah, no, that's totally understandable. Yeah, definitely a good feature. If Path of Exile did something like that, I think that would be good. Maybe just have one character that has to make it through the story, and then unlock the ability to have other characters just kind of bypass it, go right to mapping or something.
Here's hoping on PoE 2, maybe they'll get that hint,
Yep, and absolutely.
I did. Well, yeah, you're going to talk about Diablo 4 later, but
yeah, no, we can talk about it right now. So, with Diablo 4, what are you thinking?
I had heard some rumors that they were going to go to somewhat of the same style like Path of Exile was going to, and they were going to make rares a little bit more important too than they are, and have the ability to change some of the uniques, some of the stats on them. I don't know if that's true or not, but if they're doing that, I think that would make it really cool.
Yeah, there was in the YouTube video with Riker, he did an interview with the lead designer or the lead director or something like that, and they were talking about So with Diablo 4, they're making it all darker and grittier. So they're going in the direction they should have with Diablo 3 that they didn't go. It's going to be darker, grittier, and their item system, they wanted to change it because like with Diablo 3, they have a lot of items that are like, you know, this skill is like mediocre, but then this piece of item or the set will increase the damage by like 3,000%. And people were actually, you know, getting sick of stuff like that. And then with Diablo 4, they decided, okay, we're not going to do that. Instead, items are going to have kind of basic stats like, what was it? I think they got rid of like strength, dexterity, and intelligence because people were saying like, I'm a strength character and I don't need items that drop with intelligence on them. And so instead of filtering that, so you always only see the stat you need, because that kind of makes it like kind of pointless, they just went with like damage and defense. But then
they made it more simple then.
Right. And it makes more sense. Like when you break down everything, you know, seeing all these stat modifiers, you know, strength, dexterity, accuracy, crit, like all these things, at the end of the day, you're just going, well, how much does that increase my damage? You know, or how much does this increase my defense? So they simplified it. So you're not sitting there trying to bypass all that data to get to the point. The point's just right in front of you. But they made it too simple from what people said in the tests. So now they're altering that, and they created, what is it? It's like angelic power and demonic power, and then something else. The way those are going to work, I guess, is there's extra stats on the gear, and if you have acquired so much angelic power as a stat, you'll unlock that stat's ability to be like added to the weapon or whatever, you know, you'll have access to it. Same with demonic, and you can kind of teeter which direction you go in, whether it's you're leaning more towards angelic or demonic or whatever. I don't think it's a character personality thing. It's more of just a stat thing. But then, yeah, like you were saying with the uniques, there will be uniques, there will be rares, there will be sets, but sets at a lower extent. But they're also coming out with unique items that you can put on a weapon like a rare, and it gets a unique modifier, like what you were talking about. And
okay, yeah, that might have been what I read. It's been a while, so, and like I said, it was just a rumor then, but I think that was more along the lines when you said that about putting certain rare things on.
Yeah, so I think that'll be, if that works the way that I'm thinking, I think that'll be relatively game changing when it comes to action RPGs. Being able to take a rare that you found and you specifically like the stats off, and then you throw a unique modifier on it, and you're like, boom, this is my unique, like, it's perfect. I think that'll be really cool.
I agree.
And then with the lore of Diablo 4, have you seen like the trailer that they released for yeah,
I did see it. It was a lot darker. It looked real gritty. It was cool though. So
yeah, it was like horror
really
movie.
Excited when I seen it. So yeah, like you said, they're definitely heading in a darker direction, which is good.
Yep. I think Diablo 4 has a lot of potential. I think from the demo, it was, I don't know, it was like 50-50. Like you could look at it and be like, oh, this is fantastic. It's a improvement from Diablo 3, but it also didn't have enough to be like, oh, I'm going to buy that at full price, you know, full price AAA game. But they're also
I bet you the demo was better than the phone game.
yeah the damn phone game. I don't think anybody
people probably took the demo a lot better than they took that phone game that was coming out there that they thought everyone was going to be excited about, and was like,
yep. Hence why, like, Path of Exile, when they announced their mobile game, they were like basically mocking the launch of the Diablo Immortal one. And it worked for them. Like, thanks Diablo for taking the fall for that. Now we can come out with a mobile game and be taken at least remotely serious. Jeez. So yeah, there's other features too. I'm trying to remember with Diablo 4 that they were talking about. There's supposed to be open world bosses to where like you'll need like a crew of people to like go tackle. so kind of MMO style. And the end game that they were talking about, I don't know if you heard them discussing any of it, but it's kind of like a mapping system. You'll find, what were they saying? You'll find items that correlate to like a specific dungeon out in the game, and that dungeon's going to have like unique modifiers and stuff like that. So for example, they said something like one of the modifiers could be like a fire ground or something like that is chasing you like through the dungeon as you're progressing. So like it basically keeps you having to move forward, no slacking or anything like that. And I think that's a cool idea, as long as there's more to it than just simply that, or else it's just a cookie cutter mapping system.
Right. They need something that sets it apart.
Yeah.
I hope Diablo takes from PoE, and I hope that PoE takes some from Diablo 2 for their next game, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Any ideas? Like, you've played a lot of action RPGs. What would you like to see changed? Whether, you know, it's Path of Exile, Diablo, anything like that. What do you think action RPGs need to stay relevant? Or at least to make it better for you?
More people playing it.
That's a given. That's a given.
Because yeah, then more people, you know, if they're playing it, then they're definitely going to be making more content.
Yeah, that's true. Though surprisingly, Diablo 3. Yeah, Diablo 3 was actually really successful. I don't know if you saw the sales on it, but it was one of the top selling games like of all time when it came out. And then even still, like, you may not think it, but their sales are still doing perfectly fine, which is annoying because they're not giving us any new content, yet they're still making decent money off of it.
Right, and that's the crazy thing, where you have PoE that's a free game to play, not making money except for if you buy cosmetics or stash tabs, you know, which that's a given. That they will make money off that. If you enjoy the game, they will make money off stash tabs. But other than that, like, I mean, they're not making, I'm sure they're making some, but I mean, you know, they're offering a free game and then trying to make money off people that just...
Yep. No, absolutely. Yeah, with action RPGs, there's also Wolcen that's coming out that has a similar end game. It seems like a lot of action RPGs are having that similar style end game of grinding through, you know, rehashed dungeons over and over with like scaling difficulties and modifiers and everything like that. Me personally, for action RPGs, I think they need something maybe not 100% new, but they need a new integration on those things. And maybe, I mean, I'm always a fan of playing with a group, playing with more people. Maybe if there was a way to really capitalize on that, like, it may not sound like a great idea, but what about having, you know, 6 to 8 other players that we go into a raid? Like, go in, you fight big bosses that require strategy, you know, like 3 of you have to go over here and stand on these plates, and the other 3 of you have to go over here and like activate this, and then during this phase everyone does damage, and then during this phase you avoid damage or else it'll be reflected on you. Like, what do you think maybe about something like that?
Yeah, I think that would work. I think that's actually a really good idea. I think you would have to have a really good dodge style mechanic though for something like that. For an action RPG, you would have to have a really good dodge mechanic, because if you're doing it with that, you have to have some way that everybody has kind of the same ability to get away,
get out of the way,
you know. Well, Wolcen might not be a bad one for that because of the roll mechanic.
Yeah, if they pushed a little bit, like maybe, well, no, Wolcen does pretty good with it because you can actually spec into having more rolls as well. So yeah, that's not too bad. Maybe they could capitalize on something like that. But there was another action RPG, Divinity. I don't know if you ever played that or ever saw that. It was on Steam.
Not played Vanity.
Yeah, it was on Steam. It was like a Asian server action RPG, but it was like, it's kind of like 50-50 MMO action RPG. Like, you went and got like 20 quests. You had a mount you could get on and ride around, and there was open world environments. But the control scheme and the view was all, you know, Diablo-esque. And I thought that game was going to be huge, but it just didn't offer enough in character development. Like, everybody was like the same 3 characters running around doing hundreds of quests, because that's how, you know, they like to make their MMOs over there, like 5,000 quests you need to complete as your dailies.
Right. They like their dailies.
Yeah. It's crazy.
Did you ever try Grim Dawn? It was like a lot slower pace too, but it had a really good mechanic too. I just feel like the developers kind of just dropped the ball though and just kind of stopped doing what they needed.
I've seen it. I never ended up buying it or playing it because at the time that I saw it, it was like during a review, and they kind of said like the game's really good for a playthrough, but it doesn't have replayability. And so
that's what it was. There was no end game to it, but you know, it had a really good. It kind of had a story, like you were saying too, with the quests and things. It felt more like an actual RPG kind of than a linear style thing.
Yeah. So that's the reason why I didn't get it. Doesn't mean it wasn't like a good game. It just wasn't the kind of game that I was looking for. So same with I don't know if you've ever been into like Warhammer or anything like that, but there was a Warhammer 40K action RPG that actually just got like overhauled. It's like a 2.0 version of it now, so it's supposed to be a lot smoother. And I'm a huge Warhammer 40K fan, but I still didn't grab the game because the replayability wasn't there.
No, I've not seen that. I think I played a Warhammer game though. There was an RPG back in the day that was a PvP based.
Oh yeah, the MMO. No, I know what you're talking about. It's a different game.
Yeah, I played it and was all excited for it because I'd played the old like StarCraft style ones where you know click and strategy based or whatever, and I got really excited for that MMO. I was like, oh yeah, and then that was kind of fun.
Yeah, right on. Yeah, so with Diablo 3 overall, I think it's a really good game, and for people who find Path of Exile a little too in depth, because there's a lot to Path of Exile, I think Diablo is like a really good alternative to that. Like if you like the simpler, this is my build, I don't have to worry about significant crafting and tweaking and trading and all that, I think Diablo is perfect for like that type of player base.
It's a really good start point too for new people that are coming into the genre. Like if you've never played one of these games before, it's pretty easy to pick up. Whereas PoE might be a little overwhelming.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with that. And I definitely don't think Diablo 3 is going to die like yet. I think maybe when Diablo 4 does, I'm sure it will. It might not hold on quite as long as Diablo 2 has. Diablo 2, there's still people playing it.
Dang, dude, that's insane. They don't even monitor it anymore. Like, we're done. It's your guys'. You do with it what you...
Yeah, and they're still there. But yeah, Diablo 3, I think it's in a decent place. It just doesn't have enough versatility for the end game to keep living. And hopefully Diablo 4, they'll fix a lot of those things. I feel like Path of Exile has been out long enough, and Diablo is aware, Blizzard is aware of Path of Exile. So I feel like they're going to step in and basically take a lot of things that are doing well from Path of Exile and incorporate it into what has done well inside of Diablo. And I think it'll be a good game. It's just, we'll have to wait and see, because they said it was going to be a while before it comes out. What did they say? It's not even Blizzard soon that it's coming out.
Really? Okay, I didn't hear that.
Yeah, that's what they said at the end of like their announcement. It's like, oh, it's not even coming out Blizzard soon, which is like longer than a normal person soon. So it probably won't be.
People I've seen, they're like, it's coming out this year, and I'm like, I doubt it.
We're looking more at like 3 to 4 years, I'm thinking. Because if it was soon, I feel like that would be a year. If it was Blizzard soon, I feel like that would be 2 years. And where they said it's not even Blizzard soon, I'm thinking it's going to be 3 or 4. But
I think that's a safe bet.
Yeah, but the good thing is the developers have actually been in consistent communication with the community. And they've been making a lot of changes to the game and where they're going with it. So I think by the time it finally does come out, we might get a game that's really close to at least what the majority want from the game, whether that's good or bad, because sometimes the majority is something you don't fit into, personally. But we'll have to see. And with Diablo 3, I want to say I have hopes for it doing something, but I really don't think it's like gonna do much. Basically, what Diablo 3 is now is what you get for the next couple years.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what's going to happen. It's just they're going to put most of their time and effort into developing 4, and it'll be one guy or something that's back here just keeping this going with maybe some new uniques here and things like that. But I don't see it going past the end game that it.
Right. I mean, they did do the I don't even know what they call it, the theme, I guess, of every season. I don't know how invested you've seen, but like, you know, this season's like the kill streak thing we were talking about earlier. They did, what was it, last season? I think they had like the rings that would drop, like an aura that would drop on the ground and give like random buffs, like while you were playing. They do things like that, which is cool, but I don't think it's enough to like get super excited about. It's just like a nice little extra flavor you have and whatever's going on.
It's really cool to look at this season because I actually did play and push some greater rifts, but it was real pretty to look at because money's falling from the sky and things like that. And it did have some speed boosts that were actually nice. That did.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I'll have to check that out and see how interesting it is, because the concept is interesting. I just feel like it's too little too late in comparison to what other games release for, you know, new seasons, new leagues, what have you. I feel like they're slacking a little bit, but at least they put in some effort, I guess. And so with that, I guess we can end the podcast here, and then catch everybody next time. I'm going to try and do this probably every Saturday now. New streaming synergy. We're going to have different games as different topics. And Soul Override. Yeah. And Soul Override will be joining me on most, if not all of them. So that'll be cool. Have some discussions, get some other people in here to talk about things. Next week, I'm thinking maybe we can have a discussion about Wolcen. And that's another action RPG that's coming out soon. It got delayed for a couple weeks, but
I got a question here. I always hear you say Wilson, but is it Wolson?
Wolcen. Yeah, Wolcen.
All right. It always sounds like you said Wilson. And I'm like, that's not it. It's Wilson.
Yeah, I try to say Wolcen. I don't know if it sounds different.
It sounds like Wilson. Every time I hear it, I'm like, oh, that's false advertisement.
It's Wolcen.
Yeah, I was like, it's Wilson, but I keep hearing Wilson every time you say it. I'm like, oh, okay. Oh, well, yeah, it looks like, it was delayed.
2-week delay.
Right?
Yep. Luckily, it's only 2 weeks, and if that saves us from having like a really buggy launch, I'm totally cool with it. So, but yeah, 2 weeks is absolutely nothing. So yeah, we're gonna shut down streaming synergy and hop on. We're gonna do some co-streaming of Diablo 3. It's been a while. Let's see how it goes. I'll catch everybody later.